or more afterwards to the state crime lab, but they have not really called you up and said, let's go over your testimony, your statements?
Yes, actually what happened within about 2 or 3 months after the incident, which occurred in January of 2000, I had called and sent letters to the U.S. Attorney General and the New Hampshire Attorney General because they were both looking for eyewitnesses. Approximately 6 months later, I received a telephone call and was invited to meet the parents of Brian Armstrong. I had just presumed that what I observed probably didn't relate to any homicide or murder, and that was the reason they never chose to contact me or call me back.
Okay.
So when I went to the Armstrong home, I was surprised that I recognized the photo of their son on the dining room wall immediately upon my entry into the home.
So that's when you recognized...
That's when I recognized Brian Armstrong. But I still did not know his name.
And the ex-wife didn't make it easy, but according to Wilbur Street, who interviewed the parents, Wilbur Street led me to believe the jailers somehow knew that Brian was behind on child support or had some inkling. Do you have any knowledge of that?
My recollection, this is pretty dated because I talked to the parents with Wilbur Street approximately over 2 years ago. So from my recollection is that Brian Armstrong was unemployed. He had a
41-year-old
rearage.
41-year-old unemployed welder.
That he had a child support arrearage, that he had been summoned to court regarding that child support arrearage, failed to show, a warrant was issued for his arrest, and he was apprehended, brought to the Valley Street Jail, held for several days before his actual hearing before a judge in regards to the non-payment of child support and his arrearage. That's my understanding of what transpired and what brought him there. Had nothing to do with drinking or driving or anything else.
Okay, so he wasn't arrested for being a drunk driver.
No.
He wasn't arrested because his wife complained. His ex-wife, didn't call and say arrest him. What he was arrested for had something to do with failure to appear in a court for a rearage he couldn't pay.
Correct.
And did he ever get to see that judge? Or was he dead before he actually got to the hearing?
Coincidentally,
I'm just trying to get the sequence of events,
yes.
How he got to be in the situation where his head splatters like a watermelon.
He was, a warrant was issued for his arrest. Apparently a warrant was issued for his arrest. I have seen the warrant. And the warrant was for his failure to appear at a court hearing for non-support. So he was apprehended by the sheriff under that warrant and then held over until the hearing on his reasons for and the cause for non-payment of child support.
Okay.
Now it's coincidental that we both went before the same judge on the same day.
Oh, really?
And there are actual court documents that bear both of our names that show we were heard by Judge Bernard Hamsey.
Judge Hamsey saw you both. And how did you hear what was said to Brian Armstrong by the judge?
No, I was not in the courtroom other than for my own hearing, so I have no idea.
You didn't pay attention.
I wasn't even in the courtroom.
Okay, you weren't in the courtroom. What I find interesting is the state of New Hampshire's Office of the Chief Medical Examiner dated here January 18th as the date of death, the year 2000. So it's been over 3 years, and there's been no resolution, even though you saw the guard grabbed this guy and then tossed Armstrong back. You heard his head, as you said it, break like a watermelon splattering. And
Crack splat type thing.
Yeah, sort of a crack and a splat. And I'm going to page 9 of the autopsy, and the cause of death says blunt impact injury of head with cerebral contusions, contusional hematomas, cerebral edema, and herniation. Contributing conditions, chronic alcoholism with cirrhosis of the liver. That's a contributing condition. Manner of death, it says very clearly, I don't know if the camera can zoom in tight enough to get it. Manner of death, according to the state report, is homicide. Homicide in the jail. and it doesn't say who did the homicide. But on the following page, it shows the injuries of Brian Armstrong, whose date of birth is September 30th, 1958, and he was age 41 at the time of death 3 years ago. And it shows, you know, like injuries and scars. There's a lot of scars, but it shows some injuries to the head, scar on the front of the head, things on the back, blue-red, just above the right side of the buttocks here. I mean, it looks like somebody did a little more to him than just falling back. Is it possible, Bob, that they may have done something to him when you weren't in the jail, or that you weren't there, or something happened the day before, or something you didn't see? That there might have been an ongoing...
Clearly, I have no knowledge of anything prior to what I observed.
But he was in the jail.
After he hit the floor, there was a panic alarm sounded by one of the two guards,
okay,
which caused a entry into the pod of approximately a dozen other jailers who surrounded his prone body on the floor. It kind of resembled a scrimmage contest around the body. Now, I don't know whether they were kicking him or if they were punching him, but it was not what I would call a benign group of jailers standing around the body on the floor.
Did you actually see any jailer kick him?
I saw foot movements that I could interpret in that capacity, but they were not like hauling off and kicking a football. It was more like maybe kind of probing your cat to get off the couch with your foot.
So they
but one can't tell from a distance of 50 feet what the force was of the foot action, but there was considerable action.
Clearly, the number one finding here was a blunt impact injury to the head, which is consistent with what you observed, according to the coroner's report.
And that stunned me when the family gave me a copy of the homicide report, because at that point that was the connection. When I saw the homicide report, and the fact that it stated he died of a head injury on the back of the head, that certainly matched exactly what I observed this inmate suffer when he was launched by a guard.
It also says there was chronic alcoholism, a cirrhosis of the liver, alcoholic cardiomyopathy, and third thing was a right lower lobe had pneumonia. And if he had pneumonia, I think it would have been possible he might have had sinus infections as well.
I wouldn't know that. I'm not a medical expert.
If you've got pneumonia, to have sinus problems, which would interfere with Armstrong's hearing. So even though the guard may have been shouting at him, Armstrong may have been struggling to hear what he was saying. And based on what you just testified to, that he just continued to walk calmly up, wasn't shouting at the guard, it would seem like a very plausible event. Armstrong still couldn't hear. The guy was shouting at him. And the guy didn't understand Armstrong's medical condition. Does that seem like going too far-fetched, or does that fit the picture that you remember?
I have never thought of that.